Hello and welcome to Crumbs Doilies HQ. Now I like chocolate and you guys love chocolate because you are always telling me how you love my chocolate recipes, like my devil's food cake and my chocolate brownie. So I thought I would try and invent the most chocolatiest cupcake of all time. So this is a recipe for a chocolate overload cupcake. I've packed in the chocolate here. This is going to consist of a really rich, moist, fudgy chocolate cake. It's going to be filled with a decadent chocolate truffle. It's going to have a really delicious, tangy chocolate cream cheese icing, a little drizzle of chocolate, and a chocolate truffle on top, and it is delicious. I'm going to start by making the thing that we're going to use at the very end, and that is the truffle, but also we're going to use this as a truffle filling as well to make this super decadent. I have 300 grams in my bowl of dark couverture chocolate. That's around 54% cocoa solids. If you can't get hold of that kind of chocolate, 70% will do. It'll just be a little bit more bitter, but still really tasty. Over that, I'm going to pour 120 grams of double cream. And I'm going to melt those together in a microwave. And how I do that is doing it in 30-second blasts, giving it a really good stir in between each blast. And then when it's sort of all melted together, that's ready. If you don't have a microwave, then you can do this by heating your cream in a small saucepan until it's just boiling, then pouring it over your chocolate, leave it for a couple of minutes, and then stir it to melt, and that will work just fine. Okay, so that is lovely and melted. And now the last thing we need to put in is 30 grams of unsalted butter. And then I'm just going to whisk that in. And then once all your butter is thoroughly melted, that's basically it. But because we're going to be using it inside and outside the cake, I'm going to pour half of it into a bowl and just put that into the fridge so that we can use that for truffles later. Now make sure when you put it in the fridge that you cling film it so it doesn't create some kind of horrible skin. And this does want to be fridge cold when we use it, but the remaining truffle mixture, that just wants to be left at room temperature until we need it. It's going to change consistency. It's quite runny at the moment, but we want it to thicken up just a little bit. Right, now it is time to make these lovely, fudgy, super rich chocolate cupcakes. And this is a very different technique to my regular chocolate cupcake recipe, so don't be fooled. But if you do want to use that recipe because it's really easy and it's very delicious, by all means do that. This is just going to be a lot fudgier and way more chocolatey. So I'm going to start by heating some of my ingredients together. I've got 115 grams of dark chocolate, 115 grams of unsalted butter, and 80 milliliters of cold brewed coffee. And if you don't want to use coffee, that's absolutely fine. You could just use water, but coffee really does bring out the flavour of the chocolate quite nicely. So this just wants to be put over a low heat, and you want to stir it until it's all melted. Okay, so when it's all melted and come together, you can turn the heat off and leave it for a second because we're going to whisk some ingredients together. So I've got 2 large eggs, and then I've got 20 milliliters of vegetable oil, and also 65 grams of buttermilk. And then give that a whisk to combine it all. And then you want to add your chocolate mixture, which should have cooled down a little bit by now. And when that's all thoroughly mixed in, you can then grab a sieve and sift your dry ingredients directly over the top. So I have got 135 grams of self-raising flour, 30 grams of cocoa powder, 190 grams of caster sugar, and 1/4 teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda, just to give it a little lift, and then shuffle that all through. And then give that a really good mix until it's completely smooth and lump-free. Okay, that's looking real good. Now this recipe will make over 12 cupcakes actually. I find I normally get 2 or 3 spare cupcakes out of it, which is absolutely fine because then you can just eat them in secret. But I've already pre-lined my cupcake tin and I'm just going to pour it 3/4 of the way full. You want to have about a centimetre gap from the top. Alright, so now these just need to be baked at 170 degrees C if you're using a fan-assisted oven, and I'm going to bake mine for 19 to 22 minutes. And the way that you want to check these particular cakes is with a skewer because they can be quite moist inside. So when the skewer comes out clean, they're ready. While your cupcakes are cooling down, you can make the cream cheese icing. Now, I decided to go for cream cheese chocolate icing instead of regular buttercream or even Swiss meringue buttercream because I think it's just a lot more chocolatey. Something about the tanginess of the chocolate and the fact that it's not quite as sweet as the other two really brings the chocolatey flavour through, and it's just a nice balance to the sweetness of the rest of the cake. So by all means use my chocolate buttercream or Swiss meringue recipes, that's absolutely fine, but my vote goes to chocolate cream cheese icing, and it's very, very simple. So I'm going to start by putting my cream cheese and my butter together in the bowl, and then pop that onto your mixer, or if you're just using a bowl with an electric hand whisk, just put it on your table. And that needs to be beat together for about 2 minutes. It's not going to do much, it's just going to become a bit more combined and a little bit paler. So once that's nicely combined, you can then add your icing sugar. Make sure you sift it first. And if you want to see a much more in-depth masterclass on how to get the perfect cream cheese icing, I'll put a link to my cream cheese icing masterclass in the description box below. So get that going on a low speed first, otherwise it tends to fly out of the bowl. And then once it starts to come together, speed it up and beat it for about 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, so now it's ready to have the chocolate added. And you'll notice that it's quite runny, a bit more runnier than regular cream cheese icing, but that's okay. As soon as we add the chocolate and mix it in, it'll thicken up quite a bit. And I have melted some dark 70% cocoa solids chocolate and let it cool for a little bit just so it's not too hot when it goes in. So you want to add that and mix it in really well. That is looking really, really good. And this icing is so lovely and silky. It's really nice to work with. So if you've never tried it before, I'm very excited for you. But we're not going to need it just yet. So cover it in some cling film and put it to one side because we are going to get on with making the truffles. It's truffle time. Now the reason I'm making these now before we decorate is just to give them a little bit of time in the fridge so that they're nice and handleable because they do soften up and get a bit squishy if it's warm. So I've got my refrigerated chocolate mixture out of the fridge now, and I have a little bowl of cocoa powder as well and a tray to put all my truffles on. So I'm just going to use a spoon, and you might notice I'm also wearing gloves because I hope it goes without saying, this is going to be incredibly messy because chocolate melts at body temperature. So I'm just going to scoop a bit out with a teaspoon and roll it between my hands until it's a shape that I like. Then I'm going to dump it into my cocoa powder, toss it about until it's completely covered, and then using a fork just to get rid of the excess cocoa, put it onto my baking tray and move on with the next one. Phew, that was incredibly messy, as I'm sure you'll discover when you make your own. And now you just want to put these into the fridge so they're nice and cool when we need them. Now it is time to finish these guys off, and I'm pretty proud of myself. I'm not looking too messy, but if ever there was a day to wear an apron, it is today. So now we're going to fill the cakes, and I've already put my remaining chocolate mixture into a squeezy bottle. So I'm going to make some holes using an apple corer first and then fill them up with my mixture. Next up, it's a lovely topping with the cream cheese icing. And then before we get the truffles out of the fridge, I've still got a little bit of my chocolate mixture left. I'm going to give my cakes a little drizzle first. And now grab your truffles back. And I've made a couple extra so I can have a little nibble on those later, but pick the best ones for your cupcakes and pop them on top. And that is it. The finished chocolate overload cupcake. Mega, mega chocolatey. I mean, if you wanted to add more chocolate, you could put chocolate chips in it or something like that. But personally, I think this is just enough. This is just right, guys. I can't wait to see how you guys get on. Please take pictures and put them on Instagram using the hashtag Cupcake Jemma so I can see it. And yeah, I mean, hopefully you've got some people to share this with because these are rich, rich, rich. I'll be back next week with another video, so until then, see ya. This is gonna be so messy. Okay, hang on. Oh my God. So chocolatey.